So bored. I honestly need somebody that's going to give me a little bit of a challenge, something that I can have some fun with. What's this? I actually like this guy. He's got some pretty valid points. Wait a second. Atheist. What the hell? Okay, it's on.
No atheist will ever be able to prove that no God exists. But just because we don't know that one does or does not exist does not mean that we're not allowed to make a pragmatic assertion about reality based on that knowledge. And because no God has ever presented himself or herself to us, we can pragmatically say that no God exists, and we will hold that position until it is proven otherwise. Although this isn't technically a straw man, I could easily say that it is, because I don't know a single atheist that says no God exists, definitely. But I'll let this one slide for exactly the reason I just stated.
The reason atheism exists is because people want to assert that they do not believe in a God. Otherwise, you would simply go on living your life. You don't run around saying, I'm going to have a new religion that there is no Santa Claus, and run around saying, I'm an anti-Santa Claus believer. It just doesn't happen. That doesn't make logical sense. Nobody religiously follows something they don't believe in. And that's what atheists do. They religiously follow the anti-God gospel.
First of all, what scientific findings are leading us in the opposite direction of there is no God? I would love to hear those. And secondly, we're not using science to reaffirm our current beliefs. That's not what science is. That's not what atheism is. You clearly have no fucking clue what you're talking about.
Okay, everybody uses science to try and disprove God, and it just doesn't make sense. There actually is scientific evidence that the God presented in the Bible does exist. The problem is, nobody can put one and one together. So let's discuss this scientific principle and mathematically proven principle called entropy. In layman's terms, entropy works like this. If someone is standing on top of the Grand Canyon, for example, takes a book, rips out all the pages, and throws the pages over the cliff, what are the odds that that book is going to land back in order? Of course, you have to take into consideration all the variables like wind, if there's rain, how many pages there were, how big the pages are, how deep the canyon is. But science can mathematically determine what the probability is that those pages will land back in order. Some scientists refer to this as the arrow of time. As time increases, entropy is extended because it is a variable, and every other variable will compound the odds that that book will never land back in order. As time increases, entropy is extended. It becomes greater and gets more chaotic. This happens in our universe. Our universe is a chaotic state where the longer time extends, the more chaotic things get. So this is where things get interesting. And you're a smart guy. You tell me, if the more time extends, the more things break apart, the more chaotic things get. What happens if we use that principle in reverse? What ends up happening is, at some point in this universe, there is an origin where all matter, all energy, all consciousness exist, form as one single entity. What is the difference between scientific findings of this, the scientific math that everything that is today, whether we're looking at life, we're looking at rocks, we're looking at matter, it all came back into one point in a highly ordered, all-encompassing, all-powerful, unified being of energy. consciousness, life. What is the difference between that and what the Bible tells us how creation started? It said, in the beginning was God. The Bible also says, we are all part of God. We are all sons and daughters of God. It also says, all life is part of God. Everything that is part of God. Everything was formed with God. What's the difference? This is the thing that blows my mind. A scientist can't sit there and say, there's no such thing as God, when he's not understanding what the Bible says about God, or what Jesus says about God, or how creation came to be. Both point to the exact same thing. Scientifically, mathematically proven. The exact same thing.
But why worship a God that refuses to reveal himself to us?
Why worship a God that refuses to reveal himself to us? Well, technically, that is, why worship a God that refuses to reveal himself to you? And for whatever reason, I don't have the answer for that. But you can't just go and say that God has never revealed himself to people. In fact, I would go so far as to say that God has revealed himself to people, and that is what the scientific community should be looking at. When we don't have an answer to something, the idea is to come out with theories. The idea is to explore. The idea is to find proof. The idea is to try to put together pieces. Try to understand how the world works, what we're missing, come to a deeper understanding. If that's not the way it's going to be, then what's the point of having science? Everything that has come into being started with a what if.
Just describe the world, and God happens to be unnecessary in the process.
Well, if you got anything from that whole entropy thing, it's that God was 100% necessary for everything that is.
Of course there isn't any substance there. That is the point. It is unprovable either way whether or not the flying spaghetti monster exists. Just like the magic sandwich, or the flying teapot in orbit, or Yahweh.
Do I have to repeat? Entropy proven. One of these days I think I'm going to share with you something a little deeper. But for now, just try and digest the entropy thing a little bit more.
Well, then show me the goddamn evidence. I find it amazing that you create a video about why atheism is dumb, and yet you will not prove that atheism is dumb. If you'd just give me one piece of evidence, then this whole interaction would be over and we could go on about our lives. But no, that isn't going to happen, is it? Because you know that you don't have any evidence. So instead, you focus on pointing out why atheism is dumb, despite the fact that there is no evidence.
Entropy, entropy, entropy! Ugh. Okay. You know what? I said I wouldn't get into the deeper thing. We're getting into the deeper thing, chum. All physicists who intimately understand this also understand that within a chaotic universe, something created order. With all the infinite variables, everything coming together in a chaotic environment to create a living, breathing, functioning, self-repairing device called the human body, evolution is true. Because that's what's required to build something. The Bible says we are co-creators with God. This is just an example. I'm an engineer. I have an idea. Let me just wait around until it drops out of the sky. It doesn't work like that. If I'm building a robot, I need to build the circuit boards. I need to build everything up. It doesn't make sense that a robot would just drop out of the sky out of nowhere. Because as an engineer, I need to start with the chip. And then I need to develop a board. And then I need to develop an enclosure. And then I need to develop an arm, a leg, the eyes, the sensors, and on and on and on. It doesn't disprove an engineer trying to build a device. It actually proves that somewhere somebody was a guiding force in the creation of something. Especially since the universe operates in entropy. The universe is chaotic, with an infinite amount of chaotic variables. To have order somewhere in an infinitely chaotic universe implies that somewhere there was a being that actually brought together order in a chaotic environment.
And we've descended into the life is too complex to have evolved on its own argument. Ugh. I'm gonna go back to Googling my name.
Armored Sceptic. I hope that armor is thick because you guys get attacked on both sides.
It's funny because it's a puppet.
I mean, hell, if I told you that a cell phone just dropped out of the sky after billions of years of evolution without any guiding force, would you believe me? You probably wouldn't. Now think a little more complicated than a cell phone.
Armored Sceptic asks, intimate question for Oswald. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? I asked a woodchuck that once. He told me to go myself.
Oh, Oswald, when will you ever learn?
I guess that's the best answer somebody could have when there's a scientifically and mathematically proven environment where it's impossible to have order. But how much wood can a woodchuck chuck? Could you chuck?
The burden of proof is on the positive claim, unless that positive claim fits in with a social norm. Like it's socially normal for me to eat breakfast every day, or for a person to eat breakfast every day. So if somebody came up to me and said, I ate breakfast today, I would believe them and not break the rules of logic because it is a pretty normal thing to eat breakfast in the morning. However, if somebody came up to me with a more substantial claim that is not so socially normal, like I stood on my head without my hands for 20 hours straight while playing a ukulele, I would want proof of that because that's not something you see every day. Now, technically saying that no gods exist is a positive claim, but that goes back to the blurb about pragmatism that I was talking about earlier. When somebody says no gods exist, what they mean to say is that there is no evidence that gods exist, which is a negative claim and is a short form way of saying that. So if you were to say there is no evidence that McDonald's exists, it's not your burden to prove that to me, it's my burden to prove to you that McDonald's exists. That's just the scientific method, and that's the logical method. We're not trolling you, we're not being dicks, that is just the way we do things.
It is a societal norm, and it is a positive claim. Like I said earlier, just because there is a large portion of the population where God has never revealed himself, it doesn't mean that there isn't a large portion of the population where God has revealed himself in some way. And there are a lot of situations where we can look at an individual, a psychic, somebody with alternate abilities, somebody that has certain situations happen in their life that they just can't normally explain. That is a societal norm. Those things do happen on a regular occasion.
Why do you find it reasonable that a God that requires our faith in him to go to heaven and not be tortured for eternity, to not make his presence well known, proven, and indisputable to those of us who have no way of knowing otherwise?
Well, technically you got it wrong. What Jesus was trying to say about love your neighbor and treat people equally and treat the woman you're married to as part of yourself is he's trying to explain how we should all be living life, how we need to behave in order to have a fun life, a joyous life, have happiness in our life. Those are the principles that are required for that sort of thing. If you want to ignore it and live a life of hell and be selfish, self-centered, well, you're going to be in hell for your eternity. So take it as you want, but it's really black and white. You're just making it to be something it's not.
I personally would not like my fear of the unknown to dictate the way I live my life.
Well, I agree with you there, and so do the teachings of Jesus.
You seem to have it in your mind that because we are intelligent and self-aware that we should be able to do anything and everything. But before 1789, we couldn't deconstruct or reconstruct water, but we can now through the process of electrolysis. So by 1789 standards, that would have been too complex to have happened on its own. But now that we can do it, that means that it's possible. But I don't understand your reasoning here. Look, the day is going to happen when we're going to be able to create life from scratch. Sure, it might not be the life that we know it, but it'll be basically a proof of concept. The day that that happens, I am going to have to slap you in the face for this argument, because this argument is ridiculous. But a theist might say, oh, but just because we can do it doesn't mean that God didn't give us the tools to do it.
Well, since we're all part of God, if we all came together in a collaboration and learn to understand each other, then technically we do have all the tools to do it, and we should understand everything that is. It's our unwillingness to come together, like how Jesus said, that keeps us left behind.
I'm going to do my best Richard Dawkins impression. It's called... Sorry, that's the best I can do. Yes, that's called the argument from personal incredulity.
Listen, at the end of the day, I'm not a big any specific religion kind of guy. If you look hard enough, there is some good things in every religion that exists. Well, maybe for 95% of the religions. And I'll also say that I'm not a big proponent of a lot of the things in the Old Testament. But what I do respect is anybody that has told me how to live life and how to better myself in life. Hell, Mr. Armored Knight, if you told me, hey, respect your neighbors, love one another, be peaceful, I would have respect for that message. The only reason I wouldn't have respect for a message is because I myself am a fucking asshole. If you can't respect that message, it doesn't say anything about the person who said the message. It says everything about the person who believes it or not, whether it's a myth, a fairy tale, or not. But I tell you what, I respect the message of peace that Jesus gave us, and you know what? It doesn't matter if he's the Son of God or not. What matters the most is that he stood up for it. And if somebody says that they don't believe in that, well, that says a lot about them.